In this video, we're going to take a look at some common errors or common challenges when trying to identify prepositional phrases and verbs in sentences. So first, let's review the steps for identifying the grammatical features in sentences. Our first step is to identify all prepositional phrases. After we've identified the prepositional phrases, we can just ignore those words because we know that we will not find the subject nor will we find the verb of a sentence within a prepositional phrase. So here's an example. One of the students was usually helping others before class. We have two prepositional phrases, of the students and before class. So we need to be really familiar with our list of prepositions and know all of the prepositions so that we can recognize them quickly. Of is a very common one. We can find the end of that prepositional phrase by asking of what or of whom. And the answer is the students. So that tells us how to mark the prepositional phrase. It begins with a preposition and ends with a noun or pronoun. After we've identified all prepositional phrases, our next step is to find the verbs. So we're looking for all the words that are acting as verbs in the sentence. So these could be action verbs, linking verbs, and or helping verbs. And we have to remember also that action verbs may be visible or invisible. So here's our sentence again. One of the students was usually helping others before class. Now we've already eliminated some of the words in the sentence, so we can just ignore those. And then we notice here we have was, which is a helping verb here, and our main verb is helping. This word usually is an adverb. It's just modifying or providing additional information about when this was happening, this was usually happening, or how often this was happening. Adverbs often end in ly, so that's a clue. And they may be inserted between a helping verb and a main verb. So in this sentence, was helping is the complete verb. So after we've identified the verb, then we can move on to identify the subject. And the subject is the person or the thing who is doing that action. So we can find the subject by asking who did the verb. Who was helping? Or what was helping? Well, who was doing that helping? Well, we know it was one of the students. But because of the students is a prepositional phrase, our subject cannot be within that prepositional phrase. So it's actually the word one that is the subject in this sentence. So one was helping others. So that prepositional phrase of the students provides us additional information so we know, that we're talking about one person who was part of a group of students. But the actual word that is our subject is one. Next, we're going to review prepositional phrases. A few points about prepositional phrases. They always begin with a preposition, so we need to be really familiar with those prepositions. A very large number of prepositions have to do with position, like in, on, over, above, below, beside, next to, in front of, and so on. We also have prepositions relating to time, such as before, after, during, until. And then we have some other kind of oddball prepositions that are don't fit into the position or the time category. Words like of, which is one of our very common prepositions, or except, but, with, and so on. Prepositional phrases always end with a noun or pronoun. They never include the subject or verb of a sentence. And we can identify prepositional phrases first by finding the preposition and then asking preposition what or preposition who to identify that noun or pronoun at the end of the prepositional phrase. So here are a couple of examples. I am learning about Paloma Picasso. So we notice our preposition about, we can ask, about who? About Paloma Picasso. So we know that that is where the prepositional phrase ends. In the next example, Jeremiah is running in the competition. There we see in is a preposition, so we can ask in what? In the competition. That helps us identify the end of the prepositional phrase. And notice our subjects and verbs are completely outside of those prepositional phrases. One point that can be somewhat confusing is this idea of infinitive verbs. Anytime we have to plus a verb, that is called an infinitive verb. To run, to play, to live, that is an infinitive verb. But what is interesting and important to note is first, it's not a prepositional phrase. Even though it has the word to, it's not a prepositional phrase. And it's also not part of the verb of a sentence. An infinitive verb does not act as a verb in a sentence. So that's really important to know. So let's look at a couple of examples. I love to read in the park. So first we identify our prepositional phrase. In is a preposition. In what? In the park. So there's a prepositional phrase. Then we can just ignore it because we know we won't find our subject or verb there. Then we have to find, okay, where is our verb here? Well, in this case, love is the verb. To read, that's an infinitive verb. And infinitive verbs, we can just ignore those just like we ignore prepositional phrases. So love is our verb. And who loves? Who's doing that action? I am. So I is the subject. In the next example, again, we want to start by identifying prepositional phrases if there are any. And in this case, there is one. Over is a preposition, so we ask over what? Over the weekend. So that is our prepositional phrase. And then we want to look for the verb. To camp, because we have to plus a verb, we know it's an infinitive, so we just simply ignore it. And then we find that, well, we only have two words left. I hope. Hope is our action, so that is our verb. And then we ask, well, who hopes? Who is the person doing that action? I am. So I is the subject of the sentence. So as we go through this process, we eliminate more and more parts of the sentence so that we can focus more easily on the verb and then the subject. One last common confusion is words ending in ing. So this is very important to know because verbs often end in ing. However, they do not act as a verb in a sentence unless they are used with a form of to be. And some common forms of to be are am, is, are, was, were, and so on. So here are some examples. Jackie loves reading before class. Again, we'll start by identifying our prepositional phrase. In this case, it's before class. And then we look for a verb. What is our action here? Well, in this case, it's loves. Okay? It's not reading because reading is a gerund. It's ending in ing. However, it is not used with a form of to be, so it is not acting as a verb in this sentence. So loves is the only action. That is our verb in the sentence. And then we can identify our subject by asking, well, who loves? Jackie. Jackie is the one who's doing that action. So Jackie is our subject. Here's another example. Oops, let me go back. Jackie was reading before class. So again, before class is our prepositional phrase. Then we want to identify our verb. What is the action here? Now in this case, we have was reading. So we do have a word ending in ing acting like a verb. It is a verb in this sentence because it's used with a form of to be. So was reading is the complete verb in this sentence. And then if we ask, well, who was reading? Jackie was reading. We can identify that Jackie is the subject of that sentence. Another example, reading is fun. In this case, we don't have any prepositional phrases. We have a very short sentence. We look for any verbs in the sentence, and is our verb. And then we ask, well, what is? What is it that's fun? Reading. So notice that here, reading, the word ending in ing, is acting as the subject of the sentence. And it can be a subject. So again, words ending in ing are only acting as a verb in a sentence if they're used with a form of the verb to be. One last example. I do not like my reading homework. So we'll start again by looking for prepositional phrases. In this case, we do not have any prepositional phrases. Then we look for verbs. Well, we've got this helping verb do and our main verb like. Not, remember, is an adverb. It's just modifying the verb, so it's not actually part of the verb. So do like is the complete verb of the sentence. And then we ask, well, who does not like? Who is the person who does not like? And I am the person. So I am the subject of the sentence. I is the subject, do like is the complete verb. And notice we have again the same word reading ending in ing, but it's not used with the form of to be, so it is not acting as a verb in this sentence. In this case, it's actually acting, let me go back to it, it's actually acting as an adjective because it's describing the homework. Which homework are we talking about? What kind of homework we're talking about? We are talking about reading homework. So the important thing to remember here is that in order for a word that is ending in ing to actually be used as a verb, it needs to be used with a form of to be. Otherwise, it's performing some other function in the sentence. So these are a few of some important things to review when trying to identify prepositional phrases, verbs, and subjects in sentences.